Good morning. Recently, my eldest son, in the last few months, has got into programs like the Antiques Roadshow or Bargain Hunter. And if you know the format of the program, members of the public bring items to a panel of experts. You can tell them a little bit about the history of that item and then give it a valuation of how much they think that item is worth. And occasionally you hear stories of somebody who brings in a vase that for years has just been on the mantelpiece where they put pens and rubbers in, or it's been used as a bookend on a shelf, and it turns out to be a Ming vase that's worth millions of pounds. Or somebody who happened to come across, let's say, a painting in a garage sale or left in an attic of a deceased relative, and it turns out to be a masterpiece that's worth millions of pounds. Now, though these stories are rare, and we love it when we hear those stories, as soon as we wish that, I hope that's me, I hope I find something like that, we have that opportunity every day of our lives to find masterpieces, to discover masterpieces, to see masterpieces. Why? Because Psalm 139 verse 14 says, "You are beautifully and wonderfully made." And Genesis 1:27 says, God made man and woman in his image. Now on these programs, often when the expert kind of discovers this lost masterpiece, you often get this phrase by saying, I think this is a Rembrandt, or I think this might be a Ming vase, because it's got his style, it has his signature, it's got his tone. You see, an artist, a chef, a musician, a poet, creator, always puts a little bit of themselves into whatever they're creating. Just like it says there in Genesis, God made man and woman in his image. He put a little bit of himself into it. They pour a little bit of themselves into what they are creating. I see this to a little bit of an extent, both Katie and my eldest daughter Hannah, both very creative. And when they do their paintings and they do their creative work, I see a little bit of who they are in it, because I know who they are and I can see it in what they are creating. And that's why it always hurts people who are creators in any way when somebody comes along and critiques it, because they've poured a little bit of themselves into it. And so when they criticize the painting or they criticize the piece of poetry or whatever it is, it's hard for the creator not to feel like they've been criticized because they put something of themselves into it. And it's the same with God's creative work, because not only did he make us, but he designed us. He poured of himself into us. He put his signature on us. That's why we're beautifully and wonderfully made. I mean, I could stop just now and just say that that's a great truth in itself to wake up to this morning, to remind yourself. Just say, God, I am beautifully, I'm just saying this as a prayer to myself. God, I thank you, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. But as an American author, Putty Putman, put it, at some point, I'm reading from his notes though, it became pious to degrade humanity in an attempt to glorify God. We think of ourselves as lowly to try to show how great God is. But think about this. And he uses this example of a photographer and photographer friend of his. If I were to critique the photos and the paintings in an attempt to build him up, I doubt that he would feel uplifted. Imagine if I said to the photographer, that photo is terrible. You're way better than that photo. How do you feel the photographer would feel as a result? He had poured himself into that photo. It contained an element of his essence. So by putting ourselves down, let alone putting others down, we don't glorify God or humble ourselves more. We just deny reality. We can abase ourselves and dishonor God, which is exactly what Satan wants us to do. He wants us to beat ourselves down. He doesn't want us to celebrate our Creator. He doesn't want us to celebrate the way that God has made us. And so this morning, let's remind ourselves that we are beautifully and wonderfully made. That we are in his image. Let's celebrate that. Let that truth go deep in our hearts. Let us live from that place knowing that we are wonderful. Rather than try to go into this day and do a whole load of different things and then judge ourselves at the end and say, yeah, we were wonderful because we got homeschooling done today. We're wonderful because we were on the front lines. We're wonderful because we used this time in such a way. No, we are wonderful and beautifully made. Let us enjoy that truth this morning.